I'm always fascinated by pre-show playlists. The music that plays either once the venue doors open or as you watch equipment come down and go up says something about what the band you're about to see wants you to think of them and the vibe they want to come out to. Most often, that means music from whatever genre they fall into. Usually it's the popular stuff, so even if you're only tangentially aware of said genre, there's something you can bop along to, like someone put on a Pandora radio station. But every so often, you get something that feels specific and intentional. And if you have spent any amount of time on this channel, you'll know that I love intentionality. The absolute best I've heard was the pre-show to the internet's favorite Illuminati icon, Poppy, during which we got a full hour of Toto's Africa played on loop, followed by a DJ set from Charlotte the Mannequin, who is, let's be clear, actually a mannequin. It was wild. But when it comes to heavier bands, the most interesting I can recall was actually more memorable than the band itself, since I couldn't tell you who it was for. In any case, an opener to some show played nothing but female pop stars, Britney Spears, Kesha, Katy Perry, and it was fun because the room full of big boys who were getting ready to grievously injure each other belted them out together. #community. There are certain songs, and indeed entire bands, whose presence on a pre-show will basically guarantee a crowd chorus. System of a Down, Linkin Park, that one song by Smash Mouth, that other song by Drowning Pool, Queen. And when you put all of those in a row, well, damn, you know you're going to get a good show. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week I Review. You can call me a guy who bought, never opened, and then lost an instructional DVD on scream singing. And today, I am talking about metalcore band Wage War, who recently played at the Gramercy Theater in New York. Wage War had a K-pop-like lead time, forming a full 5 years before the release of their debut album, Blueprints, which they did once they signed to Fearless Records in 2015. Now they seem to be on a pretty comfortable biannual schedule, having dropped Deadweight in 2017 and then Pressure just a few months ago. I started listening to the band in 2016, though at the time it was primarily the song Alive, which I put on a short playlist called Metal AF for when I wanted to bang my head at rather than on my office cubicle desk. Other entries include After the Burial's Disconnect, Sienna Skies' hilariously jarring Sea of Smiles, and the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza's Rudy X3. It wasn't until tracks from Deadweight showed up in my Spotify Release Radar playlist that I really went beyond that, and I found that I was enjoying pretty much everything that they were putting out. I have a particular love for metalcore, and particular love for melodic metalcore, and especially particularly when there's a clean vocalist in the mix. I mean, I love pretty much anything when there's a mix of dirty and clean vocals, but especially in a metalcore context. And that's where Wage War sits comfortably. I mean, if you go in knowing what kind of band they are, you know exactly what they're going to sound like. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The Pressure Tour has one of the better lineups I've seen in a while. The first to come out was Dayseeker, hitting the harmonizer hard with their track Drunk. They were the only band of the four that I had never heard of, and honestly, hats off to them. Frontman Rory Rodriguez had the strongest voice of the entire night, and everyone else on stage was great as well. I have since listened to their track Sleep Talk at least 100 times, and some others a few dozen each. Next up was Australian metalcore band Polaris, ratcheting things up a few notches. The set actually reminded me of the time I saw Ice Nine Kills open for Memphis May Fire and Atreyu. They absolutely fucking killed and got the energy in that room to some kind of mass hysteria. It's extremely difficult to follow up that kind of intensity, and although I like Memphis May Fire well enough and they played some good heavy tracks to get the crowd moving, it felt weak in comparison. Polaris 2 came out and crushed it. I had heard a few of their songs and enjoyed what I heard, but the live performance was just next level. People on the floor went ballistic, and I saw a few folks kind of leading the mosh pit who just didn't stay for the rest of the acts, which says something about their priorities. And fair. There was plenty of heavy left in the night, but it just couldn't compare. Like Moths to Flames was next, and though they've got some intense music, the drop in energy was palpable. I dug it, but it was definitely the least interesting set. And then after the entire crowd sang Linkin Park's In the End and Smash Mouth's All-Star, got hyped to that Under Pressure bass line. You get it? It's the Pressure tour, so they played Under Pressure. Really a thinker, that one. It was finally time for the headliner. Wage War came out to Who I Am, fitting considering literally the first line Britton Bond screams is "Go!" Which is to say, go. I mentioned before that Wage War sounds pretty textbook for their genre, and this is a good example of that. Perhaps an even better example is the frequent use of that most hilarious of metal vocal tics. Blech, indeed. I ironically love this unironically. When I was in high school in the mid-2000s, I went to see a friend's band. They had a throwback type punk song that included my friend the singer shouting about conflict in the Middle East and George Bush being a war criminal. And he absolutely is that, Ellen, but I found shouting about that at a mostly empty room of entirely teenagers to be genuinely funny. I thought they were satirizing the kind of overtly political songs until he told me after that no, he was serious. But it was still funny. And that's basically Wage War's lyrics to me. Last week I talked about post-rock band God is an Astronaut, whose work has been built on a foundation of pain and melancholy. They don't use words to get the point across because they don't need to. The music tells the story. And I don't really think that can be said for Wage War. Though when I first wrote that line, I think I was giving them less credit than they deserved. But purely as a function of their chosen genre, they're pretty emotionally limited. Screams are like the German language. Sie klingen immer wütend, I went back and forth on how to translate that line. I originally conceived it as Sie machen alles wütend klingt. Literally, they make everything sound angry because it has more of the point-proving intensity thanks to the ch. But translation is more than just throwing something into Google, and I was told by a German-speaking family member that this is actually how someone would say that. C'est la vie. And for the most part, they do keep Bond's screams angry. Stitch, possibly the heaviest song they've got, showcases that external fury, as fittingly does Pressure's song Fury. And notably, these are tracks where rhythm guitarist / clean vocalist Cody Quistad appears as instrument only. But that is not always the case. And when Quistad gets on the mic, he is rarely angry at anyone other than himself. His lyrics are emo as fuck. For songs like Gravity, Me Against Myself, Hurt, the band commits and keeps it clean throughout and tones down the intensity of the guitars and the double bass drum a bit. It fits. But these songs are currently also outliers, even if I do think they are the direction that the band is moving, considering how much more prevalent they become with each subsequent release. But as it is, it kind of lends credence to my belief that the quintessential Wage War song is Deadweight's closing track, Johnny Cash. Now, I want to preface the following by saying that I genuinely love this song, and the stripped version of it was literally the first song Danielle and I added to the 14-hour-long playlist we made for our drive around Iceland, and that the original version also made an appearance on that list. But I cannot help laughing inside every single time I listen to it because of how ridiculously overdramatic it is. I mean, right from the beginning with those strings and vocals reverberating around.
Let me tell you the saddest story. Love lost, left broken and empty.
It's one of those songs I can't actually sing without adding a little bit of a teenage whine because it sounds like something I would have written in a poem in middle school. But the sincerity of it. And then Bond comes in with those growls. The one that Johnny Cash wrote all his songs about, but I gave it all away for no return. Guess it's just another lesson that it's so strange to do it that way. But the commitment with which they perform these lyrics aimed at 13-year-old girls who, it occurs to me now, probably don't even know who Johnny Cash is, to a crowd of largely 20-something men, is something I truly appreciate. And so too is their clear love for their own music. I listened to an episode of Pete Holmes' You Made It Weird podcast with Anthony Jeselnik, where he talked about how important it is that comedians believe that they are the best comedian. Because if they don't believe that, what are they doing? And I want that for my comedians and also bands too. You can tell when a group just loves the stuff that they do, and Wage War does, and Bond especially. I really think he is their biggest fan. You know, when he is not screaming, he is rocking out, getting animated and emotional and singing along off mic because he knows just how great their music is. So I sometimes get shit from folks during these videos for only talking about the vocalists and never talking about the actual musicians. So I want to give a shout out to guitarist Seth Blake, bassist Chris Gaylord, and drummer Stephen Glessner, who are all very, very good at playing melodic metalcore, which is what they need to do. So I mentioned them. They're great. Don't at me. Wage War scratches an itch. When you want that sound, they are there to give it to you. And when you want that sound underneath lyrics that remind you of the time you took a shower with your clothes on over a piece of jewelry, I don't know who does it better. 8.3 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hamrian Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, and @BlasianFMA. If you like this video, great. If not, I'm sorry. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week. Okay.